Now, coming up next is our keynote on the topic Empowering Through Understanding Providers' Vital Role in Autism and Immigration Evaluations. Our keynote speaker is an inspirational figure passionate for increasing access to care for people of all ages. To further her goal, she became licensed under PsyPact, allowing her to assist individuals across the country who lack access to resources and providers in their state. Without taking any more time, I'd like to call Dr. Jazmin Burns, owner, founder, CEO, and licensed psychologist of Burns Virtual Psychological Solutions. She will enlighten us on the subject. In her presentation, Dr. Burns will talk about autism and immigration evaluations, emphasizing the pressing demand for expanded provider networks, support systems, and services within our nation. Let's give her a round of applause. We bring her up on stage.
Good morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah, okay. Give me a quick second. I'm actually going to be doing something a little different and using my laptop. I have to talk up and out. Can you still hear me? I feel like a giraffe, like I'm having to stretch my neck to talk. All right. So, thank you for that lovely introduction. So, as she said, I will be talking about empowering through understanding and talking about providers' roles within autism and immigration evaluations. This probably is going to be a topic that I'm going to have to fly through, but I just want to provide some basic yet foundational information to start the conversation, to start the dialogue. I am really passionate about these populations for several different reasons, and they may sound very different, autism and immigration. However, a lot of these people within the population, they're going through very similar secondary health conditions like anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation. So I really want to just bring this conversation to the forefront. So, a lot of this was already spoken about. Oh, and I see my picture's probably covering my words. I don't know if we can get that fixed, but so I am a licensed psychologist, and I'm able to see folks in about 40 plus states in the United States at this point. My private practice, Burns Virtual Psychological Solutions, is completely virtual, and the reason why I did it that way is because access to care is just really important to me. And the populations that we're seeing in my practice, they just cannot find any providers. And so, with the telehealth, the virtual world, we're able to provide a lot of these services. But not only do we do, neurodevelopmental and immigration evaluations, we offer, therapy services and the like. I've been able to work in various settings, and within those settings, I saw that there was a lot of just red tape that really caused a lot of issues in families getting the services in a timely manner. Just wait lists that were 2 to 3 years long. And so I'm really proud of what my practice has been able to accomplish. And I just listed a couple of things about me that I like to do, but we can skip through that. So as you can see, my practice offers a wide array of services. We've tried to create one-stop shopping, right? For families to just come to one place and get a lot of different services, and then we refer out. We refer out to psychiatrists, we refer out to nutritionists. We believe in holistic care, so even acupuncturists, right? Because we really find it important to see the person as a whole, right? And so those are some of the things we do, and I've already kind of talked about the things that make us special, but I really want to get into the meat of the presentation, so I'm going to kind of skip through this. So, why this topic? There is a shortage of providers nationwide who specialize in this work. When I first started in the field of psychology, I knew I wanted to be involved in the neurodevelopmental world. That was my training: autism, ADHD, intellectual developmental disabilities. But I recently, probably like 2 to 3 years ago now, fell into the world of immigration and seeing the folks in that population who just really, really need help and they cannot find it. It just made me so passionate to serve that population. Um, for providers who do this work, there is still a lack of understanding. So I've met a lot of providers who work with autistic individuals, and yes, I will be using disability first language because that is what neurodivergent individuals prefer. But there's a lack of understanding of what neurodivergence is, right? There's just a lack of understanding. There's a need for training. And as I said, most people don't know that there are many individuals who are seeking psychological evaluations for immigration services, for their, asylum or getting a visa, things of that nature. So it's a great need right now, and we can all play a role. So I'm going to go into just a very basic yet foundational, topic of autism and trying to just giving you guys a little background in case you don't know what autism is. So it stands for autism spectrum disorder. I'm going to just say autism, or even ASD, probably autism. And it is a complex neurodevelopmental condition that typically, is seen in the early years. We typically start seeing it between 0 and 3, and it is lifelong. Okay. Autism is not something that necessarily needs to be cured, right? It is a part of a person, it is a brain style difference. And there are a lot of amazing people, very successful people who are neurodivergent, who are autistic. And so it does affect a person's social, their social interactions. They may not always pick up on things like social cues, nonverbals, right? It is a spectrum of symptoms. Okay. It is still being widely researched, but we do know that autism is caused by a combination of genetic and environmental factors. All right. So I already talked about some of the characteristics. One of the things that I think with media, autism looks very obvious, right? If we watch movies like Rain Man, for example, it's a very obvious condition. And I'll talk about this in a little bit, but in females, for example, autism is not easily seen. There are a lot of pink flags, as we talk about, within women, autistic women. Okay. So I wanted to just quickly talk about the prevalence of autism because there's been a lot of talk about like it's on the rise, it's spreading faster. So back in 2018 or 2016, excuse me, 1 in 54 children were diagnosed with autism. And then in 2018, it was 1 in 44. Well, now we're at 1 in 36. So what's happening? It's not this giant epidemic. It's something we're actually just getting better at identifying autism at an earlier age. Our instruments, the tools that we use, they're getting more sensitive, and we're just getting better overall at identifying autistic traits earlier. Autism is 4 times more common in males than females. It is more obvious in males versus females. So, males are able to get diagnosed with autism typically at a much earlier age, females, not so much. So, I'm getting a lot of adult women, even older age women, who are seeking an autism diagnosis because they've always felt different, right? They've always felt like they just don't fit in for whatever reason. I won't go into this too much just because of time, but this is just a visual of the prevalent estimates based off the National Survey of Children's Health. There is currently no research that shows that living in a certain community increases the chances that a child will receive an autism diagnosis. However, there are geographic variations that could be related to how early a child is diagnosed, right? If you're living in a state that doesn't have a lot of autism resources or providers, then you're most likely going to receive a later diagnosis. So, the importance of autism providers. So, when I work with families, and again, I see people across the lifespan, but when I work with families and I do give that autism diagnosis, there is a sense of grief that I sense from the families. They're crying, they're saying, my kid will never go to school. They'll never get married. They'll never have a job. They'll never do this. They'll never do that. And I have to remind them that with a diagnosis, a medical diagnosis, that's what it's called in the field, a medical diagnosis, the child has this golden ticket. The family has this golden ticket, and they're able to get access to a lot of services and supports, right? But as an autism provider myself, I feel like it is very important to train the next generation of evaluators because, again, there is such a shortage. We need to advocate for neuroaffirming care. Like I said, there are people who are receiving services right now with providers who don't understand their differences. They shame the children and the teens and the adults for their differences. So we need to have providers who understand neurodivergence and meet the clients where they are. And, we do need to continue to work on creating more neuro-affirming tests and assessments. When COVID happened, there was, we kind of blew up in doing that, which is great. But we can definitely do more, do better. So, what does an autism evaluation look like? In case you don't know, it's pretty comprehensive, or it should be pretty comprehensive. So, depending on the age of the child, it's going to affect, or the age of the person, it's going to impact what the evaluation looks like. So, typically, it's involving, self-report measures from the parent, or excuse me, rating forms from the parent and teacher, and self-report rating forms, clinical interviewing, IQ, developmental assessments, play-based assessments if the kid is really little, and those are so cute to watch, you guys, interview based assessments, and then, of course, collateral information. So, this is talking to the teachers, like interviewing them or interviewing therapists. One of the important things with autism that research has shown across the board is that early intervention is extremely important, right? So, early intervention is 0 to 3 years old, and it's crucial for timely support. It can lead to significant improvements in the child's development. It really helps the child learn how to improve their social communication, those adaptive skills that we use every day, and even reduces harmful behaviors. There are kids out there and adults who stim, right? So they do these stimulating behaviors, and that can be flapping, that can be spinning, that can be body rocking, all kinds of things. But they can also be a little bit more harmful where they're hitting themselves on the head over and over. And those are the behaviors that we want to target, right? But early intervention does promote those long term outcomes and the quality of life. So for adults, again, it's a little bit different, and I would love to. I can do a whole talk about adults and autistic care. But many adults, like I said, do go their whole lives without a diagnosis, especially females. Okay, so many adult women are underdiagnosed or they're misdiagnosed. I have a lot of women coming to me who have been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, and they're like, I just don't think that's right. Like that's not me, and there's a lot of shame, and it leads to these secondary health concerns, so depression, anxiety, even suicidal ideation, and much, much more. So hopefully this works, but I'm gonna show a quick clip. This woman here, she's doing a TED talk, and she's an autistic female, and she's gonna talk about masking. So let's see if this works.
While my special interests were an autistic trait that was largely ignored, my other autistic traits were hidden because I was skilled at masking them. Masking is a behavior by which autistic people try to camouflage and seem like they're not autistic. Hearing this for the first time, neurotypical people might think that autistic people are insecure or manipulative for trying to hide our symptoms. This isn't true. The real reason an autistic person would mask is to is because of a natural human desire to fit in, connect with others, and achieve social and professional success. Masking behaviors can include forcing eye contact, mimicking others' behaviors, expressions, and gestures, and even memorizing scripts for small talk and common conversations. Some people are more skilled at masking than others. I'm really good at masking, and people tell me that all the time, whether they know it or not. When someone says to me that they never would have known I was autistic if I hadn't told them, or even that I don't seem autistic, what they're really telling me is that I'm good at masking. A lot of people see this as a really positive thing. It's something that allows me to live a normal life. And while it's true that some things can be easier when people can't tell you're autistic, it's impossible for a person with ASD to not be heavily affected by it. Autism is a part of us. It colors the way we think, interact with others, and see the world throughout our life. This
It's a great video, but I want to make sure we get through everything else. So definitely, recommend watching it. So what are the barriers to care? Why is there such a shortage? Well, one, I don't think there's a lot of training programs out there who really that really focus on training on autism work in a neuroaffirming way. Okay. So that's leading to a shortage of providers, especially providers of color. And then again, those providers who are neuroaffirming. There's also geographical barriers. So there are certain states that pour more money into, neurodivergence and regional centers like in California, and just extra supports and services. And there are some states that just that's like the last on their list of priorities, right? And so again, we're having families who are stuck in these states without access to care, access to getting a diagnosis, after a diagnosis, getting supports and services. There's just a shortage of all of the things, right? And then there's financial constraints. So getting an autism evaluation, I'm not gonna lie, it's expensive. It can range from $1,000 to I think the highest that I've seen is like $6,500. Okay. Insurance typically does cover autism evaluations, but insurance also dictates which tools we get to use for these evaluations, and they're not the most neuroaffirming. Okay, so if you are an autism provider doing these services, offering financial, flexible financial plans, and other things like that can be really, really helpful for families who are underserved or having financial challenges. So, what can we do as healthcare providers? We can address these challenges and we need to do so in a multifaceted way. So, as I've already said, increased training and recruitment, expansion of telehealth services so that we can overcome those geographical barriers. Advocating for improved insurance coverage. For me, that's a really big one. Educating families, empowering families, telling them about the resources available in their own backyards, right? And creating more supports and services for autistic young adults and adults. There's a lot of focus on autistic children, like school age children and toddlers, but once they reach adolescence and they age out of school and reach adulthood, they don't have any supports in place. Very minimal supports are in the country for that age group. So I just wanted to give a little bit of information on autism, and now we're going to switch over to immigration. Okay. What are immigration evaluations? So, these are just like I said earlier, comprehensive evaluations that master level clinicians can do and doctors can do to, they help evaluate the individual's needs, their mental health needs, the psychological symptoms that they're exhibiting, and it helps them gain asylum, residency, visas. It's very, very helpful. So, I want to show you a quick clip.
This is my migrant story. My name is Basilio, a son of a Mayan and an Anjoval indigenous. I had once a beautiful life. That was when I was a baby. I grew up seeing my father work each day to bring bread to our table. It was normal. That was life for my people. One day some people came to our town looking for gold. They destroyed the land and that food didn't grow up as normal. My people fight to protect their land, but the government took them as criminals. I was like 7 or 8 years old, and I learned about corruption. I couldn't live there any longer. My family took a decision that will change our lives. We decided to immigrate. They called USA as a second heaven. They told me and my brothers that we would have a beautiful life there, and so we traveled. We went to the house of a man known as the Coyote. He will guide us in our way to the second heaven. I thought that crossing a country that speaks Spanish would be fun, but it wasn't. Mexico was such a beautiful country, but I had the bad luck to meet bad people. When we were about to enter to the USA, the Coyote left us in our own. He did not tell us where to go. We slept in the house of a woman who gave us posada.
So I just wanted to share that video because that's a pretty good example of some of the stories that I hear when I'm doing my immigration work, right? There are several different types of immigration evaluations. These are the ones that I focus on in particular. This is not a comprehensive list, and I won't go through these in detail, but the ones that I'm focusing on typically have to deal with trauma, right? There are immigrants that I work with who are fleeing their country because of fear of prosecution and death, right? So those are the asylum cases. That's probably one of the most well-known immigration types, right? There's VAWA, Violence Against Women Act, right? So these are women and men who have been abused by their spouse, who's typically a U.S. citizen, and they're seeking supports, right? Extreme hardships. There's U visas. These are typically dealing with a lot of depression, anxiety, and PTSD. And then N648s are medical exemption waivers that I support permanent legal residents, those who are seeking naturalization in the United States, right? And only psychologists and MDs and DOs can do these, but there's an even bigger shortage of providers who do N648s. So if you're ever interested in this type of like immigration training, talk to me afterwards. I would love to connect. So, as I talked about, immigration providers were really important because we can provide these thorough assessments, provide evidence for these immigration cases. These reports, again, kind of like golden tickets, they go a long way in these immigration cases. We might also be called to provide expert testimony on how a robbery at a gas station can create, significant PTSD, even though it was just a one-time event, right? And then again, if you're an immigration provider, you can advocate for immigrant rights and access to fair treatment and evaluations, and offer training, such as myself, to professionals to create, again, that next generation of immigration providers in the country. I'll kind of skip over this because I've talked about it, but common psychological issues that we are seeing in this population have to do with PTSD, anxiety, depression, substance use. And then there's also like cultural and contextual factors to keep in mind, right? So there are many cultures out there who don't want to seek help because it's a sign of weakness in their culture, right? So this slide should look familiar because it's the same barriers to care as with autism, right? So we're still having a shortage. There's still those geographical barriers and those financial constraints. Okay. So this conference is amazing because we are able to network and collaborate and have a dialogue with different providers in different areas, right? So if you're in tech, you can help with this. You can help develop telehealth platforms specifically tailored to the autistic population, specifically tailored to the immigrant population. You can create these platforms and apps in different languages. You can do it like in a neuro-affirming way. Use more pictures, right? Use more animation. Neurodivergent people love that, right? Heck, I like it too. Invest in research and development to create innovative assessment tools and services and supports nationwide. If you're a business or political leader, you can provide funding or sponsorships to training programs that focus on this. Create them in your cities, in your states. You can advocate for policy changes. Talk to your government officials. Say that this is important. Healthcare providers, we are exhausted because we are trying to do so much with limited resources. And some of you guys might be like, ooh, on this next part, but healthcare providers do need to be incentivized. We are humans as well. We have families that we have to take care of. These insurance reimbursement rates these days are abysmal. And so a lot of providers don't want to take insurance. And so a lot of people don't have access to insurance providers who specialize in this work. So the more that we can advocate for each other and the families, it can go a long way. If you're in education, I just spoke on the education panel yesterday. We can integrate training on autism and immigration into the school curriculums, right? This can even be incorporating more social emotional learning, SEL curriculum into the schools, right? Collaborating with community organizations to host workshops and seminars on autism awareness, celebrating neurodivergence, celebrating immigration, the immigration population, talking to them about what they have access to and that they don't have to be afraid to ask for help. Implementing screening and referral protocols, build that into the school curriculum, build that into the school system, and advocate again for more resources and supports, especially for special education providers. Thank you. So we do have about, I believe, 5 minutes for question, 5 minutes for questions or comments. Yes. Thank you. Hmm. There's definitely a lot of meta-analyses out there, and I can try to find some to send to you directly since I have your contact. But as I said, even 100 years ago, we were not seeing autism in the way that we're seeing it now. There was a lot of focus on mothers. So I don't know if you guys have heard of the term refrigerator moms, but the concept was that moms were so cold toward their children that it was essentially causing autism in their little ones. So there was a lot of shame in mothers for several decades. And it's just now with the research and what causes autism, and again, those supports and services in place that we're again kind of looking at it in a more neuro affirming way, looking at the child and not shaming the mother, right? But yes, there are meta analyses out there, so I'll try to send those to you, okay? Great question. Did you have one?
Um, what types of mental health providers can perform immigration evaluations?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, master level clinicians, so whether you're an LCSW, an LPC, LMFTs, um, there's a lot LMHCs. It's an alphabet, you guys, like alphabet soup. But if you can if you can do assessment in your state, so I always recommend people talk to their state board, right? But if you can do assessment and diagnoses in your state, then you can do immigration evaluations, right? And again, like I said, doctors as well, psychologists, MDs, DOs. Go ahead. In the far back. Hmm. That's a great question. And I'm sorry, I missed what company, like what line of work you do. Hmm. 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 No, we need to connect. Yeah, we need to connect. You need to connect with everybody in here. So I think what you can do, it goes back to advocacy, right? Like helping insurance companies understand the work that goes into it. Insurance rates tend to be higher for people who do therapy, but they're really low for people who do testing. And I think just across the board, especially in insurance, there's just a lack of understanding of what evaluation, what testing looks like. It's not just plopping someone in front of a computer and having them type something. It's not just these questionnaires. We are doing a lot of comprehensive qualitative work as well, right? So I think the more like companies like you who can talk to mental health professionals and kind of be that bridge with insurance companies and advocate on our behalf so that we can advocate on families' behalf, I think that can go a long way. I think that can be really powerful. Hmm. 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 Yes. Hmm. I'm in Texas, so yeah, yeah. Hmm. Yeah, we'll definitely connect. Thank you for asking that question. Do we have time for one more? That's it. Okay. Thank you so much. I would love to connect, and I will be in the front if you want to talk to me. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jasmine, for that enlightening insight on that topic. It's always great to have you on stage.